Welcome back to another JJ in the Field. Timely agronomic tips when you need them most. I'm Jonah Johnson. Today we're in Shelby County, and behind me you can see here we're in another soybean field. And we were called out to look at, we had a complaint or a concern from the grower saying my soybeans look like they're going backwards. And talking with a lot of the sellers across Sunrise, we're seeing more and more of this in pockets of the state that we had some really good establishment, but all of a sudden we start to see erroneous pockets. So if you look behind me, everywhere you see stubble above the canopy is essentially spots in the soybeans that soybeans are dampening off and dying and basically showing more of that residue. So a little bit of the field history here behind me in this specific soybean field. We're about 60, 70 acres roughly, and this grower had a wheat crop last year. Then into the fall he planted a cereal rye cover, and then we planted into soybeans here in 2021. And as he was harvesting the adjacent wheat field, looking across here, he felt he had some spots that were didn't look as healthy. So he did a little investigating himself. He said, I swore I had stand early on, but then you come out here and we have missing plants and plants going backwards. And so we went out today and we started doing some field scouting. We found several interesting findings. So number one, being that we had a lot of residue in this field, which a lot of cover crop guys do, and if you're new to cover crops, I always say, what's your end in mind, but there's always a pro and con to every management system you may try to experience on your own operation. So cover crops are great for sequestering nutrients, perhaps busting up some compaction, alleviating some of that in your soils, maybe making some nutrients, holding on to nutrients, and of course sequestering erosion. But on the flip side, you're creating environments for other pests that could be a problem. In this field, we had heavy vole damage, and so we had a lot of open pockets based on this heavy residue, and that's voles with a V, not M like moles. They're in that varmint field, like field mice, all in that same family. So when we looked across through the field, we had big spots that beans were missing. So voles like to eat seed. They'll eat small seedling plants, and then as they reproduce very quickly, their colonies or families, they'll have underground tunnels. And when you're in a no-till situation, these tunnels can get larger and larger, and you can actually have large spots out in the field that are completely missing a crop. So to compound the vole pressure we had in this heavy residue field is that we've also had some late season Phytophthora come in. So we usually talk about Phytophthora, warm season disease, in the spring, right? So we have seed treatments that do a pretty good job at battling that. But Phytophthora is probably one of our number one in regards to disease importance in Ohio, if not across the whole soybean belt through the U.S. And so Phytophthora, seedling blight, but then we also have late season Phytophthora, stem and root rot. And so here, if as you're scouting your fields, you'll start to see plants that maybe we call it like the ghost look appearance, where you have some plants and you'll have pockets where they've kind of wilted and melted down, if you will, hence the term going backwards. A lot of guys will use the term loosely. So what you'll find is a girdled stem. It starts to constrict towards the soil base layer. In all this instance, this field had very few nodules on the root base. And then you note that the plant starts to wilt and leaves start to drop off, and new growth starts to go backwards essentially. And so what makes it look even worse is when you get open pockets, you got dampening off beans, and then beans around it in random spots that look healthy still. So a lot of our soybeans have some resistance built into their beans, whether it's a K gene or a C gene, and you can talk with your respective seed vendor to look what you may have. But don't be surprised that we have it this year, because if you consider our weather extremes we had a lot of water, we had standing water, we had big volumes of water in very short timing periods across Ohio. And so wherever you've had that, we've seen beans actually start to start to show these symptoms of late season Phytophthora. So our seed treatments at this time would have been extinguished long ago. Those only give us to about V3 growth stage of some protection and suppression of these earlier seedling diseases. But late season Phytophthora is really nothing we can do for that. So just to kind of give you some tips to note while you're walking your soybeans, and if you're noting some problems, they usually will start off as a yellowing, and then it starts to turn brown, and then you're left like behind me where we have these large open pockets, and they'll typically be in irregular shaped spots. Traditionally we'll follow where water might have been or ran through for a period of time. What's really frustrating is you may have a couple plants around plants that died that are completely healthy, and so that's just the randomness of how this water mold through the oomycetes have water and it colonizes these roots and makes these plants sick, because it's a vascular disease. And anytime we destroy the plumbing, when these plants start to get bigger, so they might have been healthier green earlier, but as a demand of biomass and we get in reproduction and we get heat and absence of water through the dog days of summer, that's when that demand can't keep up with what's being supplied to it. So just some thing for you to take a look at while you're out walking your fields here late here in July. So if you have more questions, feel free to follow up with any of your local ASAs or anybody on the PCT team. I'm Jonah Johnson for JJ in the Field. Thanks for watching.